Hello everybody, we're back at Marcolina's and we are going to interview Jason Shiver, who's an artist around here that does metalwork, painting, many other types of art, teaches also. So let's get started with Jason. Welcome to Marcolina's. Not like you haven't been here before, not like I haven't met you before.
Yeah, this is like home for me.
Yes it is. Yeah. It's be like we have these conversations in my backyard. So tell everybody where you were born.
I was born in New York City in Harlem. So, yeah, I went to school there till I guess second grade, and then with my family moved to Florida. My dad wanted to get us out of Harlem at the time. It was during the 70s. It was riddled with drugs. That's actually kind of comes from that time frame where with Frank Lucas and all that, where a lot of heroin was moving through the city, and I remember some of the earliest memories was my mom or my grandmother were, walking with me, and we always held hands while we walked down the street, and they would kind of nudge me and point at like a drug addict on the side of the street there doing the nod. And sometimes you'd see these junkies and they'd go and you'd swear they were going to collapse. And,
Well, you have that imagery, but what type of art were you exposed to at that time?
Well, art, we were kind of an art family, which, my parents always, bought us to plays and we'd go to Radio City Music Hall and see movies, and it was just always kind of a part of, my consciousness. We've been to concerts at Carnegie Hall. And
Did anybody in your family do art?
Well, early influences, definitely. I had two uncles that were just had a really good hand, and they would always, be drawing things, and, whenever I got to see any of their drawings, we also had some of their paintings that were in our home. So, it was kind of something that always captivated me, and then my brother went to the High School of Music and Art, so he always drew and sketched, and so there was kind of that thing, they were influences.
The brother I met?
Yeah, so yeah, that was always ever present, right? And so I remember too. This was when we finally came to Florida. That he stayed behind in New York for a while, but when he came one of the times, he gave me this book of the picture history of painting, and I still have that book to this day. It was a major influence, looking through the pages of that.
So you came to St. Pete?
Yeah.
What was St. Pete like at that time?
Well, St. Pete back then was referred to as the land of the newlywed or the nearly dead, right? We had
Before Dali, before any.
Oh yeah, it was before Dali. They had Web City. I don't know if anybody knows about Web City lore, but Web City was like before they had shopping malls, and it was this huge building that was right there on in St. Pete, like on Central and 8th, between 8th and 9th, and it was several stories high, and you would go in there and you do your grocery shopping, and we'd go like every 2 weeks whenever my dad got paid, we'd go every 2 weeks, and we would, buy our groceries. But also they had like a knick-knack novelty store, and, it was kind of almost a tourist trap type thing too. And then on the very top, they had these really corny, like animal shows with a dancing chicken and a mermaid show, and all these things. So that was pretty far back. That was.
Were you doing any art at this time?
I always, and this is, something that's always been endemic with me, is that I've always drawn, so I remember early on my mom, and I don't know how, she wasn't really an artist or anything like that, but she would like draw these, very simple rudimentary pictures of women, and I would kind of mimic what she did, and I would find myself like sitting there fascinated with just trying to mimic what I've seen from my mom, and just ideas that came to my head. And it would happen when we were all at meetings, we were Jehovah's Witnesses. So we would go.
We've been running into that a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh yeah, you have, you said?
Oh yeah, with different artists around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were Jehovah's Witnesses, and so anyway, we'd go to the Kingdom Hall, and they'd have their studies and their sermons, and during those, I would sit there and I'd start to draw. Well, my mom, she was kind of concerned at one point whether or not I would actually be listening to what was going on, because obviously that was very important. And so when I came home, she'd find that I would repeat some of the things that I heard and some of the lessons that were learned, and so she was perfectly content from then on to just let me have that and draw whenever I wanted to. She provided me with pad and paper and all that. So that was the first.
When you were drawing things that she was acceptable to her, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't have much of a range at that point anyway.
Right.
So they were, horses, mostly just people.
So when you get to high school, are you doing any kind of art at that time?
Sure, I was doing art before high school. I was
Right.
doing art in elementary school. Kind of followed the path that a lot of young people have always followed, like just drawing cartoon characters, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, those types of things.
But doing it pretty frequently?
Yeah, I would sit there with my friends, and, back then they had recess and free time and all of that. And,
You told me once that you weren't allowed to do sports, so you had to have other recreational type things to do. You think
Yeah.
art fit into that category?
No, I don't really think that was a replacement, more or less, for the sports, but it was something I would always do for free time. So, and even at home, occupied.
So when did you start really looking at art as maybe a profession? Or
Well,
even something to be do mainly a week or a month or daily? When did you start looking at that?
So that would have been more moving toward high school. So,
What year was this?
1979, 1980, somewhere
Right.
there. I remember going on a trip because we would frequently go back to New York, visit, relatives, friends, what have you. And I remember a specific trip where we went back and we went to the Ringling Museum. And I was something just drew me in like no other time before. And
What was your age at this time?
I'd say maybe 12 or 13. Could have been a little bit later, but I think that's around when it was. And so I was just walking through, and so many paintings just captivated me. I would linger behind, and everybody else was moving along, and here I am.
You remember the artists you saw at that
I
time?
remember very well Franz Klein, and there was a whole series of blue rider artists at that time that were on display, and for whatever reason, it really captivated me. And I came back. I remember coming back home and was telling everybody that I could. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an artist. And so that was the light. That was the start.
So what was your plan to transition from that stage into an artist?
Well, there was no plan. I was young enough to where it was just all raw ambition.
What were you doing though? Were you studying with people? What were you doing?
No, I mostly just mimicked what I saw out of those books. I mean, I really put my head, once my brother had passed on that picture history of painting, I looked in those books, and then I started from there to really kind of mimic and study put to paper a lot of the classical drawings and paintings that I saw in there. So you're talking, Renaissance, and even some
Did they have arts in St. Pete? Did they have art schools where you could take art classes?
They did, once I remember in high school, they did have an art class, so.
But it wasn't really pushed on people.
No, not at all, it was an elective.
Was there even back then, was there even a school around here for art?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't even know if there is one now. I don't know.
So,
So, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I know that what furthered the fuel was, and I believe it was around 1982 that, or maybe 1984, that the Dali Museum came to be in St. Pete. And then going there was like, wow, you know, I met, it's kind of like when I go to museums, I feel like sometimes that I've met some of these people that are, you know, that made these paintings. I really relate to them. And, you know, another thing that happens to me, I don't know if it happens to other artists as much or on what level, but, you know, when I see paintings sometimes in museums, I feel like there are more strokes to add to those paintings, you know, and that, you know, I can almost see myself, if it was my painting, actually getting in there and putting some strokes in where I think they may be missing or need to be added. So that's kind of an interesting thing, you know, to be able to think that you can correct, you know, Van Gogh or whoever, you know, a classical master. But,
So what was your experience with Ebor in arts at that time?
there was no real connection with Ebor until I'd say, it was probably around 2009, maybe 2010.
Was there any art-related events before that?
So, you know, I was going to also kind of, since we were kind of talking about the progression, I'm not a classically trained artist, so I'm, you know, not educated in art other than a year of some community college that I did end up doing. All along the way, I've always, you know, I've never been much of a shy person, so I go out and I see art and I'm gonna introduce myself to the artists at art shows, wherever they may be. Or at one point, I just had turned 18 and I lived in Fort Myers. And I remember going to, they had these studios and there was an artist in there. I guess he was Danish. His name was Ozanazan. And then they had another artist named Belkini that was a pastel artist. And I remember kind of almost mercilessly going in there and bugging those guys. You know, I would go in there and they really, I don't think it was that they felt like I was intruding or anything. They really would discuss art with me. They would, you know, talk to me about what I was doing and you know, it was just another connection. And I worked quite a bit at that time in acrylics and quite a bit in
What were you doing in acrylics?
I did landscapes. I did a lot where there was I remember one painting that I sold. It was probably one of the first paintings that I sold. And it was this train trestle that I would go down to and sit by the river. And it was just a really nice tranquil scene that I put in, you know, I put on, you know, put my pastels to and created. And just figured if, you know, people that would, you know, like be sitting outside of a home, you know, there were a lot of, where I lived at the time was, it's called The Bottom there in Fort Myers. And it was more or less very poor area. So I found a lot of characters that I thought that were really interesting that I would, you know, put into my paintings. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, you know, and I work this way still. I don't really necessarily have someone sit for a portrait or sit for something. I get the broader details of who they are and their character. And from there I can move, you know, like move the painting along and any background that there might be or any other parts of the painting, and then come back and finish their character, I would say, from memory.
Well, let's go back a little bit. So we've already got you up to like 18, like 20 years old.
Yeah.
So, life starts happening about here. Are you still able to do art here? I mean, you have children at this time. Were you about to get married? Or?
Well, I ended up getting married around, I was 21 years old, which was my first marriage.
I'm trying to see, did it interfere with making the art?
Well, and that's part of what I would even like to talk about. But so, when I got married, I still painted. And,
okay, that's what I want.
one of the things that happened was I went through this period where there was a lot of frustration, which, a young person getting married, that's just the natural
How old were
thing.
you when you got married?
21.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of tensions in the marriage at certain points, and I was creating at that time. And I remember that there would be times when I do these paintings, and as you can see, I like pretty large to mid-scale paintings.
These are your paintings.
Yes. So I would just become frustrated, and sometimes it would be at the paintings because, which I'm sure every artist can relate to. You're moving a painting along, and you just, it's just not hitting the pitch you want.
Yeah.
And I would, once I got angry or frustrated, I'd just take them out and just smash them and just throw them in the dumpster. And at least half a dozen times I remember having neighbors coming and knocking at my door and like, if you're gonna throw that stuff out, I would take it. You can give it to me.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I know it does. Yes, we've gone through that same cycle, yourself and me too. So, but I've like I've said.
Well, my point is that even when you're really going through a dark phase, does it stop you from making art? Does it increase your art? It affects different types of effects on different people.
Right.
Some people totally give up when they're frustrated and they can't,
right.
and things falling apart, or going together. How life affects your art. Right. Did it affect the subject matter at all?
I don't know. I think that the way I think about art is even something that's a process or something that takes a long time, there's still an immediate nature to it. There's still some sort of instantaneous part of it. So it just comes from within it. It's in there and it's just gonna come out. So whatever it is, subject matter wise or whatever, it's coming at you, right? And so I can't really attribute it to what maybe necessarily is going on in my life other than what's in there.
That's where we differ.
Coming out.
Everything goes through my life. I'm like a filter.
Right.
It comes through. There's not much you can do about that.
Well, I can't say that there's not part of that to it. I'm just saying that it's got to, whatever it is that's got to come out, it's coming out. All right. So, that's the way it goes.
So let's move along a little bit. I know you guys are at West Tampa.
Right.
But were you in Ybor before West Tampa?
We were in Ybor before West Tampa. And so, again, we're kind of
I'm trying to find a spot where you decided art was a profession that you were going to pursue because you're a teacher as well.
Right. Well, I would say that kind of happened, and this is part of it. The way that I look at it is, in a way, you don't choose art as a profession. No. Art chooses you.
Yeah.
Let's
say all the time it's a sickness.
Right. And I've always done it, and there's just no real part where I can say that I said, well, okay, this is my profession. I mean, I did do that at one point prior to coming to Ybor, which was after I worked at the shipyard. But again, like I said, I'm not a classically trained artist. So what I've done to make a living for the most part is I've been in the trades. So from a very...
Picking up skills for your...
What's that?
Picking up skills, different skills.
Well, yeah, those two continuously converged.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, I didn't pick it, it picks me. So for instance,
That's a great way to phrase it.
yeah. For instance, as how I made my living a lot of the time was in the trades. So early on, even as early as 16, 17 years old, I was up on roofs and doing carpentry, doing framing for houses, and made a living that way. And then I had a brief interruption to that where I got involved in sales of all kinds and another way to make a living, always creating during both of those periods. Then I end up in a shipyard as a apprentice, and
this is going in and welding in the bows of ships and stuff.
correct, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was
What a
kind of a
job.
spark to some things because, as I got involved with welding, then I start, seeing all these forms in a shipyard. You see these massive forms of the bows of ships and the propellers, and all those things were just really, fascinating to me. And then some of these drop pieces.
I've seen you've done some paintings of those ships, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen some of those paintings.
And then so some of these drop pieces that are just massive and they're laying there in the shipyard and there's smaller pieces by them, and you're constantly just walking along and you're kind of putting together a form in your mind and thinking, hey, I could do this with that and that with this, and I cut this, and so it's just really organic the way it all starts to come together.
So is that how you transitioned to being a teacher of welding?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
I mean,
It's through the shipyard.
well, it was many years later. So yeah, we're kind of jumping back and forth, but it's all good. So after the shipyard, I got into sales for a while, and was, one of the reasons for that was because when I was in the shipyard, you're down in the bowels of ships a lot of times.
Is it hot?
Oh yeah, it's mercilessly hot. For whatever reason, I really loved it. And so I would work on a lot of these tanks and whatnot, and cut into these tanks, and these are ships that have been around the world, so you don't know necessarily what that bunk is on the bottom, if there's some sort of fluids inside the ship that are coming out, like it's mostly going to be water because they do take out any of the like the hydraulic fluids or the fuel or anything like that. But when you cut into these tanks, there's muck sometimes at the bottom where it's been smashed on the bottom of the sea or what have you, and you have to cut that area out to repair it. Well, there's all kinds of fumes that you're breathing in, and what started to happen was I would start to get these recurring lung infections. It would start really with my sinuses. I'd get a sinus infection that would go down my lungs, and at a certain point, my doctor told me, well, it's a quality of life thing. You want to continue, in this cycle, or do you want to live? So, I wanted to live, so I ended up getting out of that and started, like I said, in some sales again.
Now, you were doing ship paintings during this, because you've had a few of them, don't you?
Yeah, I have.
So you were strongly influenced by this area.
Oh yeah, and the love of it. I mean, I don't know, something romantic, fascinating about a vessel, because it's traveling the seas, and those guys who are on it, as we've even seen recently, are in constant peril, potential for danger to run ashore or run into a storm that could end lives or damage ships. And they depend on and rely upon us to make those repairs, and that those repairs are going to be sound when they go out. So that's what kind of fascinating.
All this transpired into making you an artist who uses metal.
Yes, it did. And so
Here's an example. Right?
as far as the that's an example of some of my steel sculpture. But as far as that's concerned, as far as actually construction. What came in between that was that I forayed back into carpentry, and I joined the carpentry union. And while I was on one of the projects, there was a guy who told me that after this project, hey, I'm going to China, and I'm going to go work on bringing in or finishing the Shanghai Disney Resort project. And if you want to, there are some spaces, there's some slots. I'll tell them about you, and you know, if you want to, maybe you'll end up over there. And I kind of take everything I hear on projects with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And when I finished that project,
This is a union job.
yes, it was a union job. When I finished that project, I ended up with a commission. That was a kind of smaller commission. It was a chameleon. It was a sculptural commission, and I ended up doing this for Valspar. Valspar was doing a Habitat for the Humanities project, and in the common area of this little like park in this community they built, they wanted a sculpture of a chameleon. So they commissioned me to do it.
This is where you're putting this sculpture?
This is in Clearwater.
All right.
And I can't really remember the name of the street it's on, but it's back in a little community. And so I was finishing up that project when the people from China called me to have me come over, and I went over to China.
So you were working for Disney though, right?
Yes. And so it ties back into my art. Like I said, everything continues to converge.
Yeah.
And it picks you instead of you picking it. The people that I was working with who originally got me on the Disney project knew that I did artwork. And so when he went over there and was telling them about me, he was telling them, you know, this is a guy who's got an artist ethic, and he can also perhaps help you out in different ways. So when I landed in China, what I got involved with was they sent me out to factories where they were producing, the first factory, they were producing the finials, you know, and finials are those very shiny spires that they put at the top of castles, and even like in UT has those spires. Those are,
Now I know what they are.
yeah,
I
they're
didn't know what they
finials.
were before.
So they put me in a factory where they were working on these finials, and there was a high demand on the one that they put me on immediately. So although as we went over there, we were not to be workers, we were more consultants, right? So we didn't actually get to put our hands into the work, but we were there to make sure that the aesthetic of everything came together to the standard that Disney wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just amazing too to be able to see these people who were so highly skilled at what they did, and to just be involved in that. And so there's art butting up again to my trades. So after that, they put me on other factories that were doing things for the, doing pieces for the castle. And in China, everything they did, they had to make it super scaled. They wanted it to be the biggest park in the world. And so this castle was amazingly large. And we worked on all the little corbels and the archways for windows, archways for doors. And we did a whole little section of a garden that you know, that this factory was making. And they're all made out of like fiber reinforced concrete, gypsum, and plastics. And so it's a master model, first article, and production system. So, you know, you start with a master model that gets approved by the art directors and the architects, and then they move on to a master model, which is the first model, and this is for everything. So this is for...
Is this part of the fabrication thing you were trying to explain?
Correct, this is all fabrication.
That actually hit me now.
Right.
As you were talking, go ahead.
Yeah, so you know, that's what I did over there for 13, 14 months. And then when I came back, a friend of mine that I worked with in the shipyard.
This is the best part of the story.
I hope so. But anyway, a friend of mine that I worked with in the shipyards hits me up and says, well, what are you doing now? And he was working at HCC as a welding instructor in their post-secondary vocational program. And he kind of hooked me into going over there, and I started over there, and I've been there.
HCC.
Yeah. HCC.
Now, you didn't finish the China story.
Well, what didn't I?
About you having a show over there and sending all your stuff.
Well, that's true.
Let's talk about that. That's interesting. That's the
Okay.
part I was talking about.
Well,
Tell us exactly what you had a show set up in several places in China, correct?
well, no, it was only going to be one show that was at a gallery in the M50 area of Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went over there, I kind of had my eye on the prize, and I worked a little bit. I didn't, I didn't do a lot of painting because there wasn't a lot of time. We were doing, 6 days a week, 12-hour days, that kind of thing. But I did a little bit of painting, and they had a show because there were many artists on hand. There were sculptors that were specific for the some of the attractions that actually had their hands in that, like we said, the master models who created the master models and molded those. So they ended up having a show of Disney people in the what they call the project administration building, and so I had a painting that I put into that, and it was really kind of honored to be involved with a show for a lot. I mean, a lot of these guys are just master craftsmen. They're amazing. But at the same time, while I was over there in my spare time, and this is what I do in any city that I travel to, is the first place that I'm going to go to is the museums and the galleries. So in Shanghai, they have an area called M50 that has about 200 galleries, and there's every kind of art you can think of in these galleries. And what I thought to do was well, let me get one of the interpreters. I'll pay them a certain amount to go out with me to these galleries and talk to some of these gallery owners and see if I can find a spot where I can, maybe have a show and that they'd be open and, looking at my art. So I had a young lady named Mavis who was just amazing. She was probably one of the best educated interpreters that they had even worked at the corporate headquarters of Disney for China in Beijing. And she went around with me, and she, started, looking with me into and talking to gallery owners, and we found Tony, who was one of the gallery owners, and he was very open to looking at my portfolio. So we met with him, and he decided, hey, we can do a show. Let's do a show. So it was kind of funny because it was toward the end of the project. We end up deciding we're going to do a show and when it was going to be. And so I was in contact with him.
Because I even have a T-shirt from you.
Yes, you do. So the whole thing was a go. What we did not anticipate, and what I did not know, and no one was there to inform me of, was that once I shipped all my work, when you ship your work like that, the biggest fear is, okay, it's going to a foreign country. I better get some sort of insurance for it and, protect my work. Mm-hmm. Well, the Chinese government found, what their common practice would be is if you're going to have a show, especially anything of art or cultural value, they're going to want to tax that before you ever even make the first sale. So based upon what I insured it on is what they wanted to charge me in taxes just to have the show. which was a prohibitive amount.
Yeah.
And so
no one had ever informed you of it.
no one informed me, not the shipping company and not the gallery owner. I think that one of the things with the gallery owner and why he wasn't going to be aware of that is because he's had Western artists in his gallery before. However, over in China, there's a lot of people that go over there from various countries to do work, and they bring their work with them. Or they go over there and they create their work there. So there's no tax implication with that. Whereas I was bringing my work from outside in, they were going to want to tax that. And so I didn't have my show.
So you were kind of caught between a pillow and a hard place. You have to insure it.
Well,
I mean,
I've learned since that most artists, what they do, and this applies to almost any country.
Here's a lesson for everyone.
Yeah, this is definitely a lesson for everyone. What they do is they put zero value on their work. They send it over, and they have their show and send it back. So in my case, what ended up happening was my work was sitting there in a warehouse, not to be released until I could pay, I believe it was $26,000 was the figure, or
You tried to borrow that from me, right?
yeah, I did, and you were no good for it. For
No,
some
it was
reason. But so there was a whole thing of, you know, my work being stuck over there, and thank God I made a few friends while I was over there. One of them happened to be a young Chinese lady named Miko, and she had previously worked for a logistics company, and so she knew her way around a little bit and did some negotiating for me. But every day it sat there, the bill was ticking up. So what I was able to finally negotiate almost after a year was I got with the logistics company, the shipping company here, and it was like, okay guys, you know, you guys didn't give me any sort of heads up as to what the options were. You let me insure my work. You could have, you know, you were the experts here. So I don't want to eat the whole bill of having to ship it back as well as the fees for it sitting there. So I think that you guys, in good faith, should pay for either one or the other. So they paid for all the fees for it sitting there, and I paid for the cost of it coming back. And I took a big sigh of relief because, you know,
You had some metal sculptures in that too.
I did.
The horse was in there?
I had 3 sculptures in it. It was 11 pieces total, so it was
pretty heavy too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So it was 11 pieces total, and yeah, that was a very dark chapter because, you know, here I am worried because, you know, the other alternative would be if I can't pay that price, whatever it may be, they're just going to destroy my work, and you know, and I would put quotation marks around it because, you know, they would open those crates and probably say, okay, well, you know, try and sell it somewhere instead. But, you know, it's fairly
well, it's important to get that story on because there's a lot of people who you know, will reach that stage when they'll have internet. You need to look it up. Like when I went to Saudi Arabia, when I found out that there was a lot of things there that I wasn't informed on. Like I was informed that you don't have to actually work. They pay you while you're there, whether you did work or not. And they should have never told me that.
Wow.
Because they never saw me again until they deported me.
Not the case.
So let's move on a little bit. I was, Bradley Cooper was the head of the Evil Art Association at first, I believe.
Right.
Then it was me. Then it was you. And then it was Becky Bukes.
Oh, really? I didn't know Becky came
And
back.
I don't know, I think that was the end of it.
Didn't Princess?
Oh, Princess Rashid, and then it was Becky Bukes. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we had some great people there do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Well,
so
Ybor Art Association went the way of the dodo too, so.
well, I think it'd probably be resurrected.
So you have any memories of the Ybor Art Association when you were running it?
Absolutely, man. I was, I actually had a studio in the colony.
Yeah.
And we put on a lot of shows that I'm pretty proud of.
Do you remember any artists that were there then? I don't think I was there then.
Yeah, you were there. You were there for a part of it. You weren't there for the entirety of it. Yeah, Stephen Palladino.
Stephen Palladino.
Noah DeLette.
Mr. Tokyo now.
Yeah, Noah can forget him. Manu.
Manu.
Yeah. Who
We
else?
can forget him.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that one.
yeah.
There's one name he's going by now.
Right. And there was an endless array of characters that were out there toward the end. Felicia.
Michael Piazza was up there for a little while.
Well, Michael Piazza, I think he had an office kind of thing right for a while.
Yeah.
And he helped us with a lot of the promotion.
Noah DeLette?
Yeah, I think I mentioned Noah. But,
Yeah.
and yeah, so like I said, we did a lot of shows that we were proud of. We did the Essence of Ybor, which we actually did over at the Scientology building.
Yeah, I was in that.
Yeah, that was probably one of our big ones, or probably the biggest we did.
Is that the only time you associated with the Scientology people?
Yeah, absolutely.
That turned out to be okay though, I thought.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, they didn't come out and, with one of those pens and, or nothing. That was.
It turned out to be
Yeah,
you and Moira, your wife, who works with you on some project.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, it's a lot of the shows that were developed. She did a lot of the heavy lifting. She did most of the heavy lifting.
Using your
Say.
name.
Well, Ybor Art Association.
Okay.
We're Ybor Art Association. And of course, a lot of this, my artistic journey, it just couldn't happen without her. I definitely push her to the limits. So, love you, honey.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's never, or I should say it's never, but for me, it's not an easy journey. There's always that calling as far as that's concerned. And that's one of the lessons I think, too, that I want to talk about is that, when it comes to young people, one of the largest keys to success is just going to be persistence. And, I can't really say that I've achieved some sort of mega success with art, but I do know that I'll always do it, and I do know that it's always going to be part of my life. And I've given into the idea that it's going to be, regardless of what else goes on in my life, it's going to be that persistence that I'm going to bring to doing it.
Well, you have such a wide array of art. You do metal sculpture, you do children's books, you do paintings, this next project you're about to talk about, we'll go to West Tampa in a second, because you and your wife ran West Tampa Art for a while.
Right, so after we left Ybor, we went to the West Tampa Center for the Arts, or CENTA, and we did quite a few shows over there too. There were, we held a gallery over there, or we had a studio over there, several different studios over there. And yeah, the journey kind of continued there.
How long were you there?
I think about 2 years over there, maybe two and a half, 3.
Were you there for the Guillermo dumpster fire? Guillermo Portales, he got kicked out of there because they said he started a dumpster fire over there.
No, I did not know about that.
I don't know if that's true.
No, he was before me.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Right? I think so.
Yeah, I've had shows in there before you were there and then after you were there.
Yeah.
And I've heard that art's supposed to come back to that building. Somebody was saying that.
Well, I hope so. And there's another thing that that continues to happen is that the art it's kind of becomes, I think, with many of the entrepreneurs, they have a heart for art, and they integrate it and use it more or less as a tool to attract people. And this is the endless cycle, right? The artists come in, and I think you've probably talked about it on every interview, right?
Yeah.
Artists come in,
They run out the rats, and then we get run out after the rats.
The business people come in, hey, this is great. And then, you know, hey, prices go up, they price us out of our studios.
Happened in Atlanta, and every city I've ever
every
been.
place. But that was a great experience too, where we did, one of the shows we did was more or less like one of the big ones was a political show called Common Sense. And that we held that during the time that this was Obama running for his second term, and the RNC had their convention here in Tampa, and we did a political show, and I thought that was really good. We had Ligarano and Reese came to that show and did a piece in the park that was kind of associated with us, and yeah, it was pretty spectacular, I thought.
Now, when you were up here in the colony, who was the artist that was doing all the perceptual art? He was doing all these bizarre. You remember him?
Oh, Signorelli.
Yeah,
I
Signorelli.
can't remember. Mark Signorelli.
Yeah.
He would do performance pieces and things.
Yeah, and he would do them right out here on the streets of
Oh,
New
it was
York.
great. I really
That was
liked it.
really.
I don't even know what happened to that guy.
I don't either.
We really liked him.
Nice guy,
In
but
spirit,
interesting.
And in spirit, and I thought his work was really cool too.
So let's bring it around a little bit. You said you're going to be doing some fabrication for something.
Yes. So I just been over the last few days looking at and talking with a guy who he actually did some consulting on some of my pieces, on some of the coatings on some of my pieces. So I met him at a place called Advanced Metal Coatings in Largo. And he's somewhat of an artist himself too. He's done some cast pieces and things like that. And he's by trade a chemist. So he retired a few years back, and he decided that he along with several partners, I think he's got a few partners in this, that he's going to start a distillery. And
Distilling, exactly.
distilling rum, vodka,
Okay.
I think maybe even gin. And he said
Back when I was growing up in Mississippi, you did that. They arrested you.
right
Now everybody does.
They're popping up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But he bought an old Quonset hut building. You know, those are like those barrack buildings, like if you're old enough, Gomer Pyle.
Where's this at exactly?
It's in Tarpon Springs.
All right.
And so he wants me to do all the fabrication work inside, which, you know, again, the trades and the art is always a mixture for me. So there is going to be some artistic side to, you know, like some of the you know, some art panels that'll go on some of the walls. But I'm also going to do some of the structural side. So he's putting a mezzanine inside, and I'll do stair stringer up to the second floor, and the railing, decorative railings, and all of that too.
How long does it take you to do, you think?
Well, he's really wanting to get this done by the end of the year. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I think it's maybe a little unrealistic, but you know, you've got to, when it comes to those projects, you got to set a mark and then just go for it.
Well, like you said, you be teaching welding and all this, so you have people you can call upon to help you.
And I will be doing
I will not be one of those.
No, you will not.
Work is a 4-letter word for me, so I don't like that.
So, yeah, so
That's into the drawing and the painting. That's not work. But I mean, you enjoy that kind of thing.
Well, I enjoy it to
Yeah.
a certain degree, and it definitely helps pay some bills. But also, this guy is he's got an art aesthetic too, so he wants to have art shows and things like that in there, rotating art shows, and definitely he's a fan of my sculpture, so I'm sure that I'll have some pieces that I'll do for him.
Bad taste, good. Well, he remembered you from past, and you just ran into it.
No, he actually called me up.
All right.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, we're doing this, so I want you involved." And so, you know, he also, you know, is I'll also be helping him, you know, to seek out some of the other trades, you know, through people that I know, connections that I have, you know, masonry trade, carpentry, all of that.
So let's talk about your art for a second. You have landscapes, fish, everything. Do you ever do any abstract type of art?
I have not historically done anything abstract.
You're always trying to recreate nature, are you?
For the most part, yeah, something from nature. And, you know, I feel that nature to a certain degree becomes abstract to the eye.
Well, art by definition is abstract, so yeah.
So, you know, you can, you know, I think that that, for whatever reason, till now has satisfied that desire that I think most artists will at some point embrace in their life, to move toward the abstract. And so, you know, even in pieces, I feel that the eye has to dance across the canvas, or that's what you're trying to create, is a environment where the eye dances across the canvas and explores new things every time it does. So
you're big on contrast too, colors.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, perspective. But I don't know. It's hard for people to break. For me to do abstract, because I know really how, if it's done well, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the hardest arts to do.
Oh, absolutely.
If you know, if it's most people want to stick because most people can relate to an image. They can't relate to abstract. Oh, my little son could do
and
that.
Then what's going to
but
happen?
They don't really understand what goes into that.
And then what's going to happen once a viewer looks at an abstracted piece, right? What they're going to do automatically is they're going to add the imagery to it. Oh, that looks like you know, like even how Gerbach was talking about it, you know.
Yeah, Gerbach was breaking it down into the New York school, and
right.
You know how he is. You know, your action painting and your color film, which he was started out as a color film.
Right.
So you know,
yeah.
But I don't know, surrealism and postmodernism. I really.
To which I have.
And I actually like brutalism, and a lot of people don't like that. Brutalism, the architecture from, you know, it looks like barracks, and it's just brutal. That's why they call it brutalism. But
right.
I love that kind of architecture, and most people don't really enjoy that. You know,
right.
They actually try to tear a lot of it down.
But you know, so in terms of subject matter and style, I don't feel compelled to stick to any one thing, and I think that's what has opened me up to a lot of the commissions that I end up getting, because you know the answer is can you, and then it's always yeah, of course, you know. So that's how I ended up earlier or last year with a commission to do some illustration for a children's book.
Yeah,
and
won an award too, I believe.
It's won several awards, yeah. Well, not my work necessarily. I think one of them was very related to my work, but the book itself, yeah. And
we had the release party, or
yeah, we had a release party right here.
A lot of people.
Margaritas, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
shout out to Margarita.
Shout out to Margaritas.
who has us hear all these interviews and everything. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is.
So you'll stick with imagery mainly. That's because that's what you enjoy doing. You know, I like to mix it up. I like to mix up the abstract and the imagery. Because lately, I was telling you, I do birds with abstract. Because the birds hook in the average person, and the abstract, maybe they can expand their mind a little bit to understand a little bit what, you know, what's going on with that.
Well, you know, I mean, I never say never, so you never know. At some point, abstract I may move myself that way. I can't say.
So what are some things that might be going on for you in the future here? I've heard some rumors about different things.
Well, there's talks with the aquarium that there's a series that they want to do, and there's already the first of the series has been done, and so I did already get paid for that. That's
Was that the butterfly? And
No, it's the smaller fish that are on the outside of the studio where my building
Let's tell everybody,
the building where my studio's housed.
Let's tell where your studio is.
Yeah, my studio right now is at Channelside. So I'm the resident artist at the Dance Project, which is right there on the corner of 12th and Washington, is
I
it?
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
By the dog park.
I'm sorry?
By the dog park.
Right by the dog park, yes.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, the first of the series is already completed. And the series is called All Fish Lead to the Aquarium. So what the plan is to find spaces throughout downtown, Channelside, and Ybor, where we're going to place these sculptures. And the sculptures will, the main composition of the fish that are in the sculptures will all point physically, geographically toward the aquarium. And so that is something I'm excited to do. I already have two sculptures that are earmarked to go into, or two, I should say, two other sculptures in addition to the first one that are earmarked to go into the series. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then of course there's the distillery that is gonna.
So I'm gonna be seeing you for a while. You sound like you got a lot of work. I'll just come and visit you.
Yeah, you just come and visit.
Yeah, and then you'll be at Tarpon Springs, and then working on the aquariums too, possibly too. So
Yeah,
that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can do quite a bit of the work at school. Of course, as far as the distillery is concerned, it's a it's a project where I'm going to actually have to hire on some people to to help with some of that work. So again, I'll dig into some of my students.
I'll be
from
getting
the
you my
past.
resume real soon, so you
Yeah,
throw it away.
Be a consultant.
Yeah, I'm a consultant. That's right. Like in China.
Yeah, I tell you what,
I'm
China,
physically touching.
that was the best because hey,
I'm not allowed
really
around
responsible for anything.
I'm not allowed to, my wife doesn't let me anything with welding, explosives, or even
Anything
firecrackers.
sharp. Yeah.
It's a long story.
Forks
sometimes.
with corks. That's for you.
Yeah, there you go. So is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would like to say is that look, for younger people who, and I have even a few of them too that come into welding and they're interested in welding because they're interested in doing art. And to all young people who are interested in becoming artists, what I would say is, number one, you really can't buy your way into it. Number two, it's gonna be, if it's something that's for you, it's just gonna be part of you that you can never cast off. So be prepared to marry it up to everything that you do, make a space for it. As they say, as you will hear often, protect your art form, which means that don't let it be polluted by people who are gonna, tempt you to just give it up for lesser amount. Value yourself first, and you'll always make the right decisions about what the next project is, where to spend the time, and the time is the actual commodity.
Yes,
Not the
that is
money.
true.
So, that's
All
about
right.
it.
Anything else you want to talk about?
That's about it, I think. But,
And always remember that when you have art teachers that are brutal to you, if you have fat people that come in and are brutal to you about you talking about your art, be glad they're doing it. They're doing you a favor. They're toughening you up, because any gallery places, any place you go, they're going to be much more brutal than your people looking at your art or anything like that.
well, to that, think about this. And I'm sure you'd agree, I'd rather have a guttural reaction that's, horror and some sort of a strong reaction that's bad than just a meh. You get the meh.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that.
Oh, really?
No, I don't mind.
Yeah, I'm looking for a reaction that's going to be something that.
I don't just want to take it off and throw it in the fire immediately. So.
Right. Live with it for a while, maybe you'll like it when a puppy dog.
Yeah.
But for me, I prefer some sort of a strong reaction. The reaction is I don't like it. So
Okay.
take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
And we'll go across the street and have a drink in just a minute.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming, Marcelinas. We got some more people lined up. We have some nice people here today. Thank you so much.